You've been telling yourself you want to live healthier, but you have no idea where to start. The good news is that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a private chef and personal trainer to live a healthier lifestyle. It starts with just a few little changes that you build upon day after day. Sure, there are guys named Fabrice who charge 1,000 English pounds per hour to whip your body into shape while wearing spandex. But you can also just go for a 30-minute walk every day to lower your stress, reduce the amount of cortisol being dumped into your blood, and even help you to lose weight. If you walk outside, the benefits are compounded. Experts who've gone to prestigious universities have studied the effects of being outdoors and learned it makes us happier, more cooperative, smarter, and retain our memories better. 2. You could also fork over some major cash to have a highly trained nutritionist tell you what not to eat. Or you could just make some silly, simple changes, like giving up one junk food a week while replacing it with something better, like leafy greens, vegetables, fresh fruits, nuts, seeds, sprouts, and healthy oils. If you did this every week, by the end of a single year, you would have completely transformed your diet. One of the biggest components to our overall health is mental health. We're quick to ditch the sugar if we need to squeeze into a dress for a special event. But how much do we take our daily happiness into account? What if you could feel like $1 million every day by simply altering neurochemicals in your brain? It's not hard to do this. Simply increase foods and lifestyle choices that create natural happiness hormones like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. That means you can eat dark chocolate, laugh as often as possible, and add probiotics to your gut to feel like every day is a good day. It's about time you got down to change your lifestyle. Comment below and tell us, what's the first step you'll take? Leave a like and share this video to share the video with your friends. Share the knowledge. You can also comment an idea for a video you'd like to see. For weekly content like this, please subscribe to Health Chronicle. New ONE Tanya Cushman Reviewer 1. I don't know if you've ever felt like this guy feels. He came home from work and he says to his wife, I thought we'd just slip into our jogging suits and spend the evening watching TV. Sounds pretty good actually, doesn't it? How many of you are tired at the end of your days? We all are, right? How many of you have physically active jobs or lifestyles where you're running around with your head cut off all day? Anybody? A few lucky souls here. Unfortunately, most of the activity's been engineered out of our lifestyles, hasn't it? Due to our labor-saving devices and all our digital distractions, we have become very inactive. But the good news is we can do something about it, and hopefully that will be our goal that we'll accomplish tonight. This cartoon always makes me think of my dad. I grew up in the small town of Mott, the spot where the girls are hot, you know? Southwest. There was other jingles, but we won't go into them. But my dad owned a bar in Mott on Main Street, and our family home was about 2 blocks away from Rickson's bar. And so he had his routine. For 37 years, he would head out into whatever big car he was driving at the time, drive those 2 blocks to the bar, come home for lunch, drive back afterwards, come home, take a nap, come back and forth. Probably about 6 times a day, he'd make that trip in his car to work. Crazy. Very crazy. But, you know, habits are kind of tricky, aren't they? They're like that. They become kind of automatic and part of who we are, and we don't even realize that there's an opportunity, maybe, to do things a little bit differently. Try this for me once. Just cross your arms over your chest. And now moving forward from here, we're never going to do it that way again. From now on, we're going to put our opposite arm on top. Feels kind of wacky, sort of uncomfortable. Habits are a part of us, and it is hard to change them. But we are faced with big trouble coming our way. A virtual tidal wave, a tsunami of problems, and so it's so important for us to try to develop some healthier habits. We know that most of us carry too much weight. We've got a big problem with obesity. And if you struggle with weight, don't feel alone because we're really all in this together. How much money do you suppose we spend in the United States a year on weight loss? Any guesses out there? $30 billion. So we're all in this together. It's a big struggle. And the worrisome thing about obesity is that it's really the canary in the coal mine, because where there's obesity, several problems follow. One of the most concerning ones is that by 2020, public health officials are predicting that 1 in 3 of us are going to have a chronic, expensive, long-term disease, diabetes. We spend a ton of money every year on healthcare. $2.5 trillion a year on healthcare. More than any other country in the world. What does Nike tell us to do? Just do it, right? Like it's that easy. It isn't. Changing behavior is hard. It's tricky. And, it's definitely something that we need to work on. And probably one of the most concerning things is the legacy that we're leaving. Our children are more sedentary than ever. Our kids don't always know how to listen to us. At least mine didn't. But they'll never fail to imitate us. And so it's so important for us to set a good example. If we take care of ourselves, then they're going to be so much more likely to do the same. If we have a positive relationship with exercise and a healthy relationship with food, then they will as well. So what gets us into this big heap of trouble? Really, it's just 5 things. The 5 things that get us into all this trouble are not surprising: too much eating, too much drinking, too much stress, too much smoking, and not enough exercise. And although it's very concerning and kind of depressing, there's also great opportunity here. 80% of that $2.5 trillion that we spend a year on healthcare is because of lifestyle factors, things that we can control. So there's a great opportunity for us there. If we could get our arms around developing a healthier lifestyle, we can prevent 80% of disease. There's a new criminal in town. Have you met him? It's the time we spend sitting on our rear ends. In the past couple decades, we've been pretty quick to shake a stick at a smoker, haven't we, and say, "Don't you know those cigarettes are going to kill you?" But it's very important for us to realize that if we're not shaking a leg ourselves, we can't really point a crooked finger at a smoker, because our relative risk is the same as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day if we're inactive. Sitting on our rear end saps our energy and ruins our health, and we're doing more and more of it than we've ever done. Most Americans spend about 80% of their days sitting. And so it's something that we really need to do to take charge of and do something about. So please don't take a seat. When we have a chair, about 100 things happen, and 99 of them aren't good. Our circulation slows to a crawl. And when our circulation slows down, it affects our whole body. When we sit, our fat-burning enzymes decrease by 90%. Our calorie burning comes to a screeching halt. When you sit, you burn about 1 calorie a minute. When we stand up and move around, we burned about 7 calories a minute. And so you wonder, well, how much of a difference does that make in an 8-hour day at work? A big difference. If you're a lawyer or an accountant and you spend most of your 8-hour day in front of a computer, you probably burn about 1,500 calories on your work at your work. If you're a barista in the coffee shop, we're talking more like 3,000 calories. So what we do throughout our day, how we move throughout our day, and if we can interrupt sitting makes a huge difference for us. Our bones get softer, our muscles get weaker, and probably one of the most important things is our productivity really starts to flag. How many of you have an energy drain about the middle of the afternoon? We're so tired. Without that blood flow, our brains just don't work as well either. So we know that being active makes us healthier. That is critical. But sometimes I don't think we give enough emphasis to some of the other benefits. When we take time to take care of ourselves and be physically active, it is one of the best antidepressants that we can ever go on. It improves our mood. It improves our sleep. And I don't know about you, but when I take time to take care of myself and get some physical activity in, I'm a better wife, I'm a better mother, I'm a better employee. And probably most importantly, I have the energy then to give to others as well. And we all know that serving others is one of the best ways that we can really add meaning to our own life, and that's what really makes us happy. So important. And then, how many of you want to be smarter? Many times we underestimate the value of how exercise affects our brain, affects our cognitive and intellectual skills. It is critical. When we exercise, we stimulate growth factors that actually build brain cells and also have a special effect on a small area of our brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus has a big job. It's the area of our brain that controls learning, memory, programming, processing, and as we get older, the hippocampus starts to shrink. But we can keep those losses to a minimum if we stay physically active, and exercise is really the only thing that's been shown to decrease our chance of developing Alzheimer's by 70%. Remarkable. Exercise also helps the right and left side of our brains work together. Let's give it a try. I want you all to stand up for me. So we're going to start with our right arm, and it helps if you count with me. Here we go. Pretty simple. 1. Count out loud. 2. You've got it. 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got the right arm? You got it? Okay. Left arm's a little trickier. Here we go. 1, 2. It's right here. 3, 4, 5, 6. Right arm. One more time. Simple as pie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The tricky side, left arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Are you ready to put the right and the left side of the brain together? Bring it on. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. Here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3, 4, 5, 6. Go ahead and have a seat. Did you have to think a little bit about that? I had to practice that a lot before I was willing to get up in front of a group and do it, but exercise challenges our brain in many ways and so important for us. So if you're a student and you have an exam coming up, one of the best things that you could do is take a half-hour break and go for a swim or a bike or a walk or a run. It will help you to retain everything that you're trying to learn. So we know what we need to do. We know how powerful a healthy lifestyle is and how it can add years to our life and, more importantly, life to our years. But how do we get ourselves going? The best fire is not the one that somebody else lights, but the one that we light from within us. And when we talk about motivation, what it is, what it isn't, how to get it, how to keep it. Oftentimes what I see is that people wait for that magic moment. And we think that when we get there and life is easier, things settle down a little bit, that we're going to start taking care of ourselves. We think that when our kids get to school, when our kids get out of school, we're going to start taking a little bit of care of ourselves. When the wind stops blowing, we are going to go for a bike ride. Right? When it finally warms up, we're going to get out there and go for a walk. When it cools down, we're going to get moving. But we know, don't we, that there is no there. When things are going to get easier, there is no magic moment. We need to do something on a daily basis to take good care of ourselves, to invest in ourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, if we want to lead meaningful lives. I think another thing to think about, too. Many times people think that first we get motivated and then we start moving. But really, it's the opposite. If you want to build your willpower, if you want to build your motivation, you need to do something positive for yourself and motivation follows. Every time you make a choice, and we are confronted with choices all day long to be more physically active, every time you do something positive, motivation follows. It doesn't come first, but it will follow. I like to think of it as motivation 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, where we really want to get to. So, motivation 1.0 is when we start taking a little bit better care of ourselves because somebody tells us that we have to. Maybe it's an employer. Maybe it's a death threat. We just had a heart attack or we just got a diagnosis of diabetes. So, 1.0 is something or somebody else knocking on the door saying, "Hey lady, trouble's afoot and we need to make a change." Motivation 2.0 is we're getting a little bit closer to being more internally motivated. That's when we start taking better care of ourselves because of the sticks and carrots. So a stick might be a little sharp stick poking you, might be your insurance company who says, because you smoke, you are going to have to cough up another $250 a month on your insurance premium. And sometimes getting hit in the wallet is a motivator for us to change. Or maybe the carrot that gets you going is some type of reward. And it might be your employer who says, if you do this fitness challenge, we're going to give you some extra dollars to spend in your health savings account. But at some point, no matter how sweet it is, and crunchy the carrots are, or how sharp those little sticks are that are poking us, that doesn't always lead to long-term behavior change too. And some research shows that incentives can actually backfire on us when we incentivize people with money or prizes or whatever it might be. So I'm wearing my shirt inside out, and a lot of you have pointed that out to me. And I do this from time to time, and when somebody says it, I say, I know, I'm wearing my shirt inside out. I'm doing it on purpose, and I'm doing it to help people turn their health around. And they say, well, how do you do that? And here's the story. So I became a firefighter to help people, to save lives, and to slay dragons. Now, obviously, we're not slaying real dragons, but that's our term for slaying fires. And a fire is really a living, breathing entity, and it's hellbent on creating all the destruction and devastation. And so we as firefighters have to use all of our wit, and we have to outwit, outsmart it, and outlast it. And whether it's an offensive fire or a defensive fire, there's certain tactics. But the essence of basically killing a fire is you've got to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. And it doesn't matter if it's a house fire, an apartment fire, a high-rise fire, or if it's a wildland fire, we've got to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. Now I retired from firefighting a little later. It was a little over 3 years ago. So I am no longer fighting fires. But I'm helping people, I'm saving lives, and I'm slaying a different type of dragon. The dragon that I am slaying today is what I call the five-headed chronic Western disease dragon. And this, over the last 100 years, has gained more strength and power and momentum, and it is flying around, and it is creating more. More death and destruction, right, on different individuals, families, cities, and states in this country. It's just absolutely amazing. And let me introduce you to this five-headed dragon. So right here we have the leader of the pack. We have heart disease. 100 years ago, heart disease wasn't even on the map as one of the top 10 killers of Americans. Today, it's first and foremost. 1 out of 2 of us will die of heart disease. Here we have breast cancer and prostate cancer. Cancer will overtake heart disease as the #1 killer of Americans if the trends continue. And in the back row here, we have diabetes and we have obesity. Close to 50% of Americans by 2030 will be either pre-diabetic or diabetic, and over 70% of America is now overweight or obese. This dragon is playing for keeps, okay? It's playing hardball. And the current paradigm that we're using to try and slay this dragon is that we're going to have to think outside the box. There's a saying, you can't break a glass bottle from the inside. And what we're currently doing with pills and procedures and more legislation and more doctors, we're not going to break that glass bottle. We have to think outside the box. And the answer is plant-based nutrition, something so simple yet so profound and so inexpensive that we can absolutely lay waste to this dragon. And the answer is plant-based nutrition, something so simple yet so profound that we can absolutely lay waste to this dragon that now comprises 75% of this country's healthcare costs, right? 5 diseases, 75% of our healthcare costs. And we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, every one of these diseases is either preventable or reversible with plant-based nutrition. Now let me tell you why I have so many ripples of hope about what we can do as a country going forward. We did something really remarkable at a little firehouse in Austin, Texas. We had an event that led to a discovery that one of our own was basically a dead man walking. And so I challenged these guys, for 28 days, let's eat all plant-strong, fruits, vegetables, whole grains and beans, some nuts and seeds. And these guys, in 28 days, morphed themselves from medical time bombs into healthy superheroes. It was absolutely amazing. And it was the spark that we needed. And the confidence that these guys needed to start a wellness revolution at a firehouse in Austin, Texas, the land of beef. And so we just fed on this. And the reason we were so successful is because we made health a habit at the fire station. And some of the things that made it easy is, the guys at the fire station, they're my second family. So we had tons of support. We had an amazing amount of love between us, compassion, respect, and admiration. So we had the support that you need. We developed routines. Every day, we'd come in and we'd have a plant-strong lunch that we'd share together. Then we'd have a CrossFit workout in the afternoon. Then we'd have a dinner, a plant-strong dinner. And we would alternate who would buy and shop for the food. And then together, we would cook it and eat it. And then clean up after. And then the next morning, we'd have a plant-strong breakfast. And then before we left at noon the next day, we'd have a plant-strong lunch. So these are routines that became consistent for years, for months, and years. And then I had to educate these guys. These guys had the same questions that everybody has. Well, where am I going to get my protein from plants? What about calcium? And I said, listen, as far as protein is concerned, it's a boogeyman. Don't worry about it. The term? The scientific term? The medical term for a protein deficiency is kwashiorkor. And you don't know it. And you don't even have to mess with it. And then for calcium comes from the ground. It's a mineral, right? If you want to get a first-class, highly absorbable form, you want to get it from plants, not from calcium. It's not calcium. It's calcium. And then these guys, they had a huge problem. They had a huge disconnect between what they thought was healthy and what in reality was healthy. So let's slay some of those dragons here together. So first, they thought red meat put hair on their chest and made them more manly. And I said, guys, no, it doesn't. What it does is it puts plaque in your arteries, and it makes you less of a man. The canary in the coal mine, when it comes to heart disease, the first sign is an underperforming penis. And I said, you take a look at the size of the arteries that go up to the brain, to the heart, down into the legs. They're all about 5 millimeters in diameter, about the size of this straw here. You take a look at the size of the artery that goes to the male penis, it's 1 millimeter. It's about the size of this coffee stirring straw right here. And what happens after you eat all that meat, right? It gets clogged up with all the fat and the cholesterol and the animal protein. And that's problematic. So if you want to slay that erectile dysfunction dragon and allow your Puff the Magic Dragon to roar, then you want to ditch the meat and you want to reach for the plants. These guys were absolutely convinced that chicken was like the cat's meow when it came to health food. I said, listen, guys, never mind the cat. This doesn't even belong in your dog's breakfast bowl. All right? I'm going to give you the exact same amount of cholesterol as red meat. It's got the same amount of problematic animal protein. And the leanest piece of chicken is still 20% saturated fat. You're not going to be slaying any dragons with this guy here. Okay, Rip, fine. But fish is the gold standard when it comes to a healthy meat, right? And I said, no, it's the 10 standard, okay? Most fish has more cholesterol than red meat or chicken. Salmon, which is considered the healthiest, is 50 milligrams of cholesterol. You still got the problematic animal protein and varying amounts of bad fats. Don't go there, guys. Okay, fine, Rip, but the egg is the perfect food, right? We know it's the perfect food. Yeah, it's the perfect food if you want to continue to feed the dragon. If you want to slay the dragon, you got to get rid of the egg, right? One egg yolk, almost 200 milligrams of dietary cholesterol. It's the same amount as 2 Burger King Whoppers. And the egg white is a concentrated source of animal protein. Now these guys knew that processed and refined foods were not healthy. They knew about the sugar and the pop and the fried chips and the candy bars, but they had no idea that extracted plant oils weren't heart healthy and weren't beneficial. So I said, listen, this epitomizes the triumph of marketing over science. Let's pick on olive oil for a second. It takes 1,375 olives that you have to squeeze to death, right, to get enough olive oil for one 32-ounce bottle. And you get rid of all the fiber and the water and the phytonutrients and the antioxidants and the water, and you're left with 100% fat, the most concentrated source of calories on the planet, and it's 15% saturated fat. And all it's doing is contributing to America's heart disease and obesity epidemic. Okay. But milk. Milk does a body good, right? And I said, guys, milk does no body any good, all right? You've been marketed to death. Don't buy the hype. As a matter of fact, this milk is just liquid meat is what it is. It's got a very similar nutritional composition. And as a matter of fact, one 8-ounce glass of whole milk has the same amount of saturated fat as 4 slices of bacon. Okay. Fine. But cheese. Don't take away our cheese, whatever you do, because we love our cheese. And I said, I know you love your cheese, and that's exactly why I need to take it from you. Because you know what? When I think of a loving relationship, I think of something that also loves you right back. And that cheese does not love you back. Not one iota. And so I hereby declare that you all are in an abusive relationship with cheese, and you need to kick it out of your lives. Okay, fine. But don't take away our yogurt. I mean, this is the Mediterranean, like, superfood, right? People can live to be 100 on this stuff, right? And I said, again, guys, it's the magic of marketing, all right? For example, this newfangled Greek yogurt that's zero fat and twice the amount of protein, it's twice the amount of problematic animal protein, right? That's promoting tumors in cancer. That's leaching calcium from your bones. That's harsh on the kidneys and the liver, right? You don't need to go there. You can get everything you need from plants. And to put the nail into the coffin, I said, guys, we're the only mammals that drink another mammal's secretions, okay? You don't need to go there, not one bit. There's 51,000 mammals on the planet, and we're the only ones that have the unmitigated audacity to go there. All right? Don't need to do it. So the other thing we did at the fire station after I educated them is we surrounded ourselves with these fantastic foods. So it filled them up without filling them out. It tasted great, and it made them feel fantastic. So we did, like, these great breakfast bowls with plant-based milks, spelled blueberry pancakes as big as manhole covers. Quinoa and fruit, right? The magic grain, almost 20% protein. Oatmeal waffles with nice applesauce on top. And then for lunches and dinners, we would do, all American favorites. We'd do plant-strong pizzas, portobello mushroom fajitas with all the fixings, a lentil oat loaf that's kind of glazed with barbecue sauce on the bottom and the top, macaroni and not cheese. Red lentil sloppy joes that were a lunchtime favorite. Bean and grain burgers, red curry tofu stir fry, 3-bean chili. Kale ceviche salad. Kale, it's angry lettuce, right? It needs to be tamed. So we would take a little bit of lemon juice, avocado, some spices, and drive it in there. Sweet potato lasagna, an all-time dinner favorite, makes fantastic leftovers. Black beans and rice extravaganza. This is the ultimate peasant food. We could feed 5 hungry firefighters for less than $15. Dark chocolate oatmeal cookies for dessert, chocolate mousses, date nut crust fruit pies, and then a variety of fruits. But what happened is, over the course of 28 days and then beyond, these guys developed a much more sophisticated and mature palate. They appreciated all the little nuances and subtleties that are in these plant-based foods. And when you're eating the standard American diet, all you're really tasting is the salt and the sugar and the fat that it's all laced with. So I challenge you all, if you really want to, develop a sophisticated palate, go plant strong. And also what happened with these guys over the 28 days, they started pooping perfectly regularly. Right? Most Americans. Most Americans are consuming 5 to 15 grams of fiber a day. You start eating plant-based, all of a sudden it goes up to 30 to 70 grams of fiber. And now you're as regular as a Swiss commuter train, okay? And you're light and unencumbered, and the quality of your life goes through the roof. So you've got to kick the habit. And I'm not talking about smoking cigarettes right now, but I want to talk about cigarettes for a second right now. 50 years ago, close to 50% of America was smoking cigarettes. Now it's less than 20%. And what happened is America basically got educated and understood that smoking cigarettes was not good for your health. Okay? We need to do the same thing around the standard American diet, and this is more insidious and more destructive than smoking cigarettes. 94% of our calories are calories that don't count. They're destructive instead of constructive. Only a mere 6% are coming from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans that are really constructive. Healthy calories. So we need a complete paradigm shift that goes on in this country. And so this is what I want you to do. I want you to make health a habit. Take the 28-day challenge, okay, and change your health destiny. Change your relationship with food. You will forever have a different relationship. Find support. This culture, this society, does not support healthy living or healthy living. So you need to find support at family, at work, online. There's all kinds of communities where you can get support. Develop routines that make this sustainable, whether it's breakfast, every morning the same thing, Monday through Friday, whether it's finding a couple restaurants that you can go to. But find routines. Educate yourself. Read the litany of fantastic books that are out there on this subject, because once you have the knowledge, it's a different ballgame. And then surround yourself with healthy foods. We do not want this to be about willpower, okay? So have a nice, sterile environment at home. And then make food you enjoy. You saw the fantastic pictures that we were eating at the firehouse. This is not about deprivation. This is about empowerment. And if you're a true foodie, you'll want to go towards eating plant-based. 99% of the food on the planet comes from plants. A mere 1% comes from animals and animal byproducts. So, I have so many ripples of hope going forward that this country can turn it around. I know that if a little firehouse in Austin, Texas can do it, any house in America can do this. And I know that the trends are changing. I've seen it with my own eyes over the last 6 years, right? I've seen Forks Over Knives become the #1 viewed and selling documentary in America for the last 2 years. I've seen the fast food. I've seen President, right? Go plant-based. I've seen media moguls like Oprah and Ellen that are now pushing plants. I've seen CEOs like John Mackey and Biz Stone of Twitter and Bill Ford of the Ford Motor Corporation that are going plant-based. I've seen professional athletes like Asrina and Venus Williams and the #1 running back in the NFL, Arian Foster, are now plant-based, okay? The time is here. The time is now. Go plant-based. Go strong. Slay. Slay the 5-headed dragon in your life, and it all starts with what's at the end of your fork, your spoon, and your knife. Awesome. Making heart attacks history. Caldwell Esselstyn at TEDx. Coronary artery disease is the leading killer of women and men in Western civilization, and yet the truth be known, it is nothing more than a toothless paper tiger that need never exist, and if it does exist, it need never ever progress. This is a foodborne illness. My story begins actually in the late 1970s, early 80s, when I was chairman of the breast cancer task force at the Cleveland Clinic. And my frustration was that no matter for how many women I was doing breast surgery, I was doing nothing for the next unsuspecting victim, and this led to sort of a bit of global research. It was quite striking to find that breast cancer rates in Kenya were something like 30 or 40 times less frequent in the United States, and if you looked at breast cancer rates in rural Japan in the 1950s, it was very infrequently identified, and yet as soon as the Japanese women would migrate to the United States, by the second and third generation they now had the same rate of breast cancer as their Caucasian counterpart. But even more powerful perhaps was the data on cancer of the prostate in 1958 in the entire nation of Japan. How many autopsy-proven deaths were reported in Japan, and how many deaths were there from cancer of the Prostate 18, that's the most mind-boggling public health figure I think I've ever heard, but I made a decision then that I was concerned that my bones would long be dust before I could really get answers between nutrition and cancer, and so I chose to deal with cardiovascular disease, which is the leading killer of women and men in Western civilization, and it was quite striking that in this global review there were a number of cultures by heritage and tradition that simply lacked any cardiovascular disease. They were plant-based, and so with that information I came back to Cleveland, and when my wife and I decided to go on this plant-based diet for a year, and then I asked cardiology if I could have about 24 patients, which was the number that I could handle, and still carry out my surgical obligations, and the 24 patients that I received were, as my late brother-in-law used to say, the walking dead, but they were most cooperative, and it was within about, say, 15 months of starting this program that we had something striking developed. I was treating a 52-year-old gentleman who, in addition to his heart disease, had a partially blocked artery in his right thigh, and he told me about the fact that when he was crossing the skyway to my office he had to stop 5 times because of pain in his calf because of this blocked artery, so I had him go to the vascular lab and we got his pulse volume, and then I forgot all about his legs, so focused on his heart, and 8 months later he said, "Dr. Esselstyn, do you recall when I first started seeing you? I had to stop 5 times crossing the skyway to your office. This last month it got to be 4 times, and it was 3, 2, 1. He said, "I don't stop anymore. The pain has gone down back. You go to the vascular lab. I think if you look here, you can see the difference in pulse volume when I first saw him. And here we were 8 months later. It was now almost 2 times greater. So the thing that was so exciting about this was in science, we had demonstrated what we call proof of concept. Not only that, but this occurred 1 year before the invention of the statin drugs. So this was so powerful because it showed us that indeed with nutrition we could actually not only halt this disease, we could reverse it, and not shortly thereafter, what occurred, we saw this now in the heart. This is a 54-year-old security guard, where our angiography core laboratory described this as 30 improvement. What really got our attention was a fellow surgeon at the clinic who at age 44 in 1996 began to get chest pain. He did not have hypertension, he did not have diabetes, he did not have a strong family history, he was not overweight, and cardiology worked him up in October of 1996, could find nothing. 3 weeks later, he was finishing his medical schedule. Sat down to write post-operative orders, splitting headache, immediately followed by this crushing elephant on his chest pain in his shoulder down his arm. Joe was having a heart attack. Whipped down to the cath lab, start the catheterization, cardiac arrest, resuscitate, and finish the catheterization, and then he's been sent up to the floors and discharged 3 days later, but very depressed. Why? Because what they identified was that his left anterior descending coronary artery in the front of the heart, the entire lower third, was moth-eaten and diseased over too long a segment to have stents too far down the artery to have a bypass. So he was very depressed about this. So my wife and I had him out to the house with his wife for supper 2 weeks after his heart attack. "Joe, you've been eating this typical Western diet. You got the typical Western disease. We've got 10 years of data. How about going plant-based?" "Okay, yes, I'll give it a shot." They couldn't offer me anything else. He became the absolute personification of commitment to plant-based nutrition, and over the next 30 months, he then had another angiogram, now up in the surgical suites. Our offices are 3 doors apart. And at noontime of the day that I knew earlier that morning, he had his follow-up angiogram. I found myself letting myself into his office. There he was sitting behind his desk. "Joe, I understand you had the old follow-up angiogram this morning. Mind sharing with me how to go?" Got up around his desk, put his arms around me. "I think we're doing okay. Well, any chance I could see the follow-up angiogram?" Yeah, so it was really quite striking and exciting to see what actually can happen when you give the body every opportunity it can. The healing capacity is incredible. So now let's talk a little bit about how do you injure the artery in the first place. What seems to be going wrong now? On the right, there's a seriously diseased artery, and you're probably saying that's going to have a heart attack. No, really causes about 10 of heart attacks, but it certainly will cause chest pain and shortness of breath. What I really want you to notice is on the left, and here on the inside of this artery, there's this very, very tiny little dark single layer of cell magic carpet that all experts would agree is where the inception of this disease occurs. This magic carpet is called the endothelium, and the endothelium has an absolutely magic molecule that it produces. It's a gas, nitric oxide. Nitric oxide has a number of wonderful functions. Nitric oxide keeps our blood flowing smoothly like Teflon rather than Velcro. 2. Nitric oxide is the strongest vasodilator in the body. When you climb stairs, the arteries to your heart dilate, the arteries to your legs dilate. Nitric oxide inhibits inflammation from the wall of the artery, protects you from getting hypertension. And most importantly, nitric oxide in plentiful amounts will protect you from ever developing Blockages or plaque. All right, how do those 90% of heart attacks occur? You will see here the artery is divided, and what you're looking at in the first area on the left is that when you start eating that cheeseburger, the pizza, the milkshake, your blood flow gets sticky, and certain elements like your endothelial cells get sticky, your LDL cholesterol gets sticky, and then the LDL bad cholesterol migrates into the subendothelial space where it sets up this absolute cauldron of inflammation, and that cauldron of inflammation begins making inflammatory enzymes to gradually begin to thin out. This delicate cap over the plaque gets thinner and thinner until it's as thin as a cobweb, and then the sheer force of blood going over that thinned out plaque ruptures, and now we have spillage of plaque content into the flowing blood, which activates our platelets, our clotting factor, and now we hit the beginning of a clot of thrombosis, which is in and of itself self-propagating. So in a matter of minutes now we have an artery that is totally blocked, and all the downstream heart muscle has been deprived of oxygen and nutrients, starts to die, and that's the heart attack. But there is something absolutely magically exciting about this series, because if I can convince you that all you have to do is change your nutrition so your internal biochemistry is such that you will not injure or thin out the cap over your plaque, you will actually diminish your plaque and you will strengthen the cap over the plaque. All right, how do we do this? It's very easy. We avoid the foods that injure the endothelium. What are they? Even pure virgin olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower, sunflower oil, coconut oil, palm oil, dairy, anything with a mother or her own data, or there has to be something to do with. No problem, if that bothers you, I can explain one thing in a minute. The nutrition part of that kind of bullocks is that it slightly takes the cancer out of your health, it takes it out into your atrial trachea, and when you get that cancer, that can you just start a new trial, decide that you're really conscious, you have control of your TPOB, and that you're red, yellow, and green leafy, and fruit. But especially the green leafy vegetables, like I like water on the fire, what green leafy vegetables for? Choice Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard greens, lap of cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cilantro, parsley, spinach, and arugula. And now conventional cardiology, with all those procedures and all that expense, is high mortality, high morbidity, and sadly, it does not cure the disease, and the expense is unsustainable. However, when you're treating causality with plant-based nutrition, no mortality with the diet, no morbidity with the diet, and what happens with the passage of time, the benefits just continue to improve. And lastly, nobody is greater fear of another heart attack than somebody who's already had a heart attack, and how empowering it can be for them and their family to know that they themselves can now become the locus of control for this disease, destroying it, whereas in the past it had been trying to destroy them. And that lastly, I want to just share with you, this isn't just that original early study. We're about to publish another 200 patients, and the reason we have 91% compliance is because we're going to publish another 200 patients is because we have a very strong, intense, single 5-hour counseling seminar, and that's the same amount of time the cardiac surgeon has, but I have the patient when they're awake. So how do we do? If we look at the vertical axis, what you're seeing here is the average of about 3 independent cohorts cardiology studies that are quite well known, and the recurrent cardiac events after 4 years is run about 20% on average. Our own, which is called treating the cause, is a half of 1%. That means, roughly, a 40-fold difference. So in summary, it is really so exciting what happens when you treat the causation of disease, because it is not only prompt, it is powerful, and it is persistent. And for those who, in the future, are coming down with cardiovascular disease, I hope it is going to be unconscionable not to inform them of the power of this option from which they can thrive. Thank you. Why do people get cancer, how it spreads, and how to prevent it? Good afternoon, my name is Sindhu Ramani. I'm the professor of pathology in lab medicine and also an associate director for translational oncology at Brown University, Ligarada Cancer Center, Brown University. Today I'm going to walk you through how the cancer originates and then what can we do to prevent or get ourselves checked properly. So before that, I just want to let you know that our body is like a community where we have more than 30 to 40 trillion cells. They work together symbiotically. We have a digestive system which kind of digests the food. It's like a food processing machinery, cleaning machinery, and we have all kinds of systems, including an army to destroy any foreign invaders. So this slide shows that how in animal kingdom the symbiosis play a vital role in keeping everyone healthy and happy. Same thing happens in our human body. So again, we have nearly 30 trillion cells, and we also have a bacteria in our body, which is almost 38 trillion in our human body, and they all work together. Unfortunately, cancer is still a major problem. Cancer, it doesn't discriminate anyone. It's like a thief. It penetrates or invades our life and steals our health, happiness, and our wealth, everything from us. It doesn't discriminate whether it's young or old. It doesn't discriminate whether you are a male or a female. Male or a female, or your ethnicity, or you are rich or poor, it doesn't matter. It affects everyone. So it's extremely vital for us to understand what it is, why people do get cancer. If you understand that better, it's easier for us to prevent it and diagnose at the right time. So that slide shows in the world we have nearly 20 million people diagnosed with cancer in 2020. And among that, 10 million of them died because of cancer. In the US, it's the good news, the cancer incidence is dropping down every year. This slide shows that you can see that from the top curve, which shows cancer incidence in male and female, and in the bottom you see the cancer-related mortality, it's dropping down. It's really dropping down. But we still have quite a lot of cancer-related death in the sky. We saved nearly 2.5 million men and 1.5 million women's lives in the last 10 years due to advanced diagnosis as well as treatment options. I will walk you through most of that in the next few slides. However, there's one cancer we still don't have a good solution, is pancreatic cancer. Here you can see the cancer incidence is going up. And cancer-related mortality is also going up both in male and female. So we need to understand that better. Moreover, if somebody has a localized disease, let's say breast cancer, the survival rate is extremely high, 99%. But on the other hand, somebody has a metastasis, so this is a localized disease. If somebody has a metastasis or somebody has liver or pancreatic cancer, again, the survival rate is extremely low. So I'm going to walk you through about 3 different types of cancer. The reason is, many times people come and ask me, my uncle has a cancer, my aunt has a cancer, will I get a cancer? So we need to understand these different types of cancers which exist so that you understand whether if somebody has a cancer, will I get a cancer? For example, there are 3 major types we call. One is called sporadic, which happens due to our lifestyle. That is called hereditary. It's due to activity. A mutation in parents could get transmitted to the progeny. That's a hereditary. It's a familial, where it's a combination of both hereditary and the environment where they live in. The combination together causes the familial cancer. So before that, we need to understand what is DNA, what is gene, and how people get cancer if somebody has a mutation or inherited some genetic defect. So here you see. On the left, you have a cell, and the cell has chromosomes, you could see, inside the nucleus. And those chromosomes are made up of DNA. And the DNA makes genes. My daughter asked me, what is the difference between DNA and genes? She's 11 years old. And so I thought of this example where you think of a road in Providence. All the roads, you could call it as a DNA. But within that, there's a Smith Street, which you can see a small stretch of road is called a Smith Street. Same thing. You have a meter-long DNA in each cell, and a small portion of that DNA is called a gene. And so now comes how cancer happens in human beings. Just think about a car. I said we have 30 to 40 trillion cells in the human body. Now each cell is like a car. Just imagine. Now a car has a brake, an accelerator, a gas. So brake, when you are going fast, you can apply a brake. When you are not going faster, you can apply an accelerator. You go fast. When the gas tank gets empty, the car cannot go anywhere. Same way, we have a brake system. It's called a tumor suppressor. If among this 30 to 40 trillion cells, one cell decides to go rogue, the brake system works and stops the cell from going rogue. But imagine somebody has a mutation in another set of gene called oncogene. Then you are constantly pressing the gas, and the car will continuously go. Still there is one more brake, one more kind of control system, which is the gas. Once the gas tank is empty, the car cannot go anywhere. So you have a third set of control. So in body, we have a clock system, which senses how many times a cell can divide. Same way, how many years a human can live, each cell among this 30 to 40 trillion cells has a clock. It will sense this many times. Each time you can divide, then you need to stop and die. That's a programmed cell death. So that is determined by something called a telomerase. They have a limited cycle. What happens in cancer? They turn on an enzyme called a telomerase. They keep adding telomeres to the end, so they don't stop. So these are the three major hurdles a normal cell has to gain to become a cancer cell. So which is summarized here? So you need to mutate the tumor suppressor gene, mutate the oncogene, become active, then have a continuous activation of telomerase to have almost like a solar-powered gas tank, solar-powered car, so you can run on a sunlight as long as you have a sunlight. So this kind of puts the cell into a crazy signaling system, which the cell responds by dividing and creating more cells of themselves, and that end up in a tumor. And you also want to understand this cancer is mostly age-related disease. So in other words, most of the time, because we live longer, we tend to accumulate more mutation over a period of time due to our lifestyle. And that's what is shown in this slide, where you see people getting cancer only late in life. So this slide shows that if somebody has a mutation in this tumor suppressor gene, the gene's also called brake genes, which I was mentioning earlier. That's so those can be inherited from parents to the progeny to the children, but just because somebody inherits a mutation doesn't mean that they will get a cancer. Remember, there are 3 steps as normal cell has to pass in order to become a cancer cell. What it means is that if they get a mutation from their parents, inherited a mutation from the parents, which means they are prone to get a cancer. But they are not going to get a cancer, so here a kid having a retinoblastoma mutation. In a retinoblastoma gene, RB gene is developing a mutate tumor and there is something APC, which creates a colon tumor. And then you see on the right Angelina Jolie, she had a mutation in a gene called a BRCA1, which is a tumor suppressor gene or the brake gene, and she decided to go and do a mastectomy of both her breasts just to prevent cancer from occurring, not because she had a cancer. So again, the environmental effect play a vital role, so pollution, drinking, over drinking alcohol. Stress is a major player, so take time off, enjoy your life. Microbiome, we all take microbiome for granted. I said there are 38 trillion bacteria in our body, so if you kill them, they are going to create its own consequences, so be respectful of your microbiome. And smoking, eating junk food, so it also adds to cancer. So what I have done, so when I was at MIT many years ago, people in the Weinberg lab where I did my research, here is the gentleman in his lab, they found that you can transform a normal cell into a cancer cell in a laboratory by inactivating the tumor suppressor, getting rid of the brake, having a tumor oncogene, and having a telomerase. They were able to make a cancer cell. So what I found, those cancer cells don't go anywhere because they are epithelial cells attached with one another. That's what happens, and that's why all the cells in our body, they are attached with one another in order for them to be able to go from one place to another. They need to break this cell-cell addition cell matrix interaction. Now they can go anywhere in the body. It's called epithelial to mesenchymal transition. So in addition, when a pathologist look at a tumor in the lung, a pathologist could predict that tumor in the lung is coming from breast or prostate or lung or liver just because they create a structure very similar to where they come from. So they hypothesized that tumor cells not only become migratory, but also become a stem cells. That turned out to be true. Now targeting cancer stem cells become a major issue because they are responsible for metastasis, tumor relapse, and treatment resistance. We are in the process of developing treatment for metastasis, so until now you know the treatment has been more just one kind of treatment. If somebody has a cancer, they used to get one type of treatment, chemotherapy or some treatment. We have invented this precision oncology, where you have a patient, you classify them by sequencing their tumor, you classify them into group who has a different mutation in their tumor oncogene than the accelerator genes. Now based on that, we have drugs for each mutation, so you can give medicine to the patient into different groups and you get a benefit in among all the three groups. So this is, for example, an example where a patient had a mutation in a BRAF gene, which is one of the oncogene. Now you give a drug which targets that mutation, the tumor is completely gone, and there's a problem which the tumor can relapse, but that's another problem which we are in the process of addressing. Here is a Jim Allison who really revolutionized cancer treatment recently. He found that the tumor cells somehow convinces immune cells to be able to treat cancer in the same way that the tumor cells not to kill them. So he found that secret code which tumor cells tell the immune cells that I'm your friend. He went ahead and blocked that signal. By doing that, he's able to make the immune cells kill the tumor cells. That is really making a huge impact. If somebody has a melanoma some time ago, we say it's a death sentence. No longer the case. You can really treat them with immunotherapy. So the future is really, you can really treat them with immunotherapy. So the future is really bright. For example, world in days when somebody wants to get a colonoscopy for a colon cancer screening, it's very hard now. There's a company here, they have developed a small camera, which is like a pill you ingest. It just goes through your stomach. It pictures the whole gut and you get a picture of what happens inside. There's another company in the right, Olive Diagnostics, developed a toilet seat where you sit when you are doing what you are doing. It can kind of capture what is anything wrong in the urine and give you an information. And you know, there's another thing called digital twins, which is quite an interesting idea. So you guys are all constantly feeding data into various companies using variables as well as your genomic sequencing and all that. With that, people are able to create a digital twins of you, and with that one could predict what kind of medicine you may need. So here is a company, they have announced launch of Gemini, the in silicon patient for multiple myeloma. So it's basically digital twins. The sequencing cost is dropping every day. It was nearly $100 million when they initially sequenced. Now it's, you can sequence it for $500 to $800 genome. The goal is now you get the genome or this various information, feed them into a supercomputer, and that would speed out a proper treatment for a cancer patients. So until now, various experts like a pathologist, clinicians, oncologist, basic scientist, we all used to work to some extent together, but not necessarily as a team. What we are doing here at La Garita Cancer Center and all over the world is forming a team, working as a team to target this devil. So here is a group of the people who are working with me at Brown University and also the La Garita Cancer Center. Again, I hope I'm able to convince you that the future is bright. It's, you know, we have a hope, and if somebody's cancer is diagnosed early in time, the survival rate is very high, so we need to really work together. So I request all of you to play a vital role in this by participating either by supporting cancer research or participating in clinical trials, or simply by promoting awareness among people that cancer is not a death sentence. It's a curable if diagnosed early, so go get proper diagnosis, early diagnosis done, and thank you all for the opportunity.